good evening, or maybe it's morning where you are. I'm your storyteller, and tonight my mission is simple: to guide you into another world, where your worries fade and sleep comes softly, without you even noticing. Before we begin this journey, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, and leave a comment telling me where you're watching from, and what time it is for you. I'd love to know. Now find a comfortable position, close your eyes if you'd like, and let me tell you a story. I'll never forget the summer we moved to Willow Creek, a sleepy little town in upstate New York. My son Ethan was 10 years old, a bright-eyed kid with a knack for making friends faster than I could keep up. He had this infectious laugh that could light up a room, and I was counting on that charm to help him settle into our new life. My husband, Mark, had just been reassigned for work, so we packed up our old life in Ohio and started fresh. Ethan was thrilled about the adventure, but I was a nervous wreck, worrying about how he'd adjust to a new school, new kids, new everything. Still, he seemed to take it all in stride, and for the first few months things were going better than I could have hoped. Ethan's new school was a quaint brick building with a big playground out back, the kind of place that felt safe and welcoming. He came home every day with stories about his classmates, his teachers, and the games they played at recess. I was over the moon when I met the other parents at a school open house. They were warm, down-to-earth folks who made me feel like we'd found our place. But then, about 4 months into our new life, I got a call that turned my world upside down. It was a Wednesday afternoon, and I was in the middle of folding laundry when the phone rang. The school's secretary was on the line, her voice clipped and professional. "Mrs. Carter, we need you to come in to discuss an incident involving Ethan and another student." My heart sank. Ethan? In trouble? That didn't sound right. He was the kind of kid who'd share his lunch with a stranger, not start fights. I grabbed my keys, my mind racing with a mix of dread and confusion, and headed to the school. When I picked Ethan up from the office, he was sitting there, head down, his usual sparkle gone. I tried to get him to talk on the way to the principal's office, but he just stared out the window, his lips pressed tight. That silence wasn't like him. Ethan was a chatterbox, always spilling every detail of his day. His quietness felt like a knife in my chest, twisting with every unanswered question. Was he scared? Ashamed? I couldn't tell, and that made it worse. In the principal's office, Mr. Thompson, a stern man with wire-rimmed glasses, motioned for me to sit. He asked Ethan to wait outside, and I hated leaving him alone in that cold waiting room, but I had no choice. Mr. Thompson started with the usual questions. How was Ethan at home? Did he ever act out? Was he respectful? I told him the truth. Ethan was a dream. Polite, kind, the kind of kid who'd hold the door for you and mean it. I was proud of him, and I made sure Mr. Thompson knew it. But then he got to the point, and my stomach churned. Apparently, Ethan had gotten into a scuffle with a boy named Caleb after recess. They were the last 2 kids on the playground walking back to class together. Out of nowhere, Ethan had pulled a pencil sharpener from his pocket and smacked Caleb over the head with it, hard enough to make him collapse, screaming. I sat there, stunned, my mouth dry. Ethan? Violent? It didn't add up. He'd talked about Caleb before, always with a grin like they were buddies. I pressed for details, but Mr. Thompson admitted no one had seen it happen. Both boys had told the same story, though, and that was enough for him. He assured me Ethan wasn't in serious trouble. Fights happen, he said, but he wanted me to know. I left his office feeling like the ground had shifted beneath me. Driving home, Ethan stayed silent, his face pale. I tried to stay calm, but frustration bubbled up. "Ethan, you have to tell me what happened," I pleaded, my voice cracking. He didn't answer until we were home, tucked into his room for bedtime. That's when he broke, his voice barely above a whisper, his eyes wide with fear. "Caleb tricked me, Mom." He explained that they'd been playing a game, something Caleb called Superhero Showdown. Caleb had told Ethan to use the pencil sharpener as a power move to finish the game. But when Ethan did it, Caleb crumpled to the ground, clutching his head and wailing like he was dying. Then in a low, chilling whisper, Caleb had leaned in and said, "If you don't say you attacked me, I'll make sure you're sorry." Ethan, terrified, went along with it, and the teachers bought the story. My heart ached for him, my sweet boy, manipulated and scared. Anger surged through me. Caleb had played my son like a pawn. I decided to handle it myself. That night I dug through the school directory and found Caleb's mom, Sarah. When she answered the phone, her voice was warm, almost too sweet, like she was trying to win me over. She said she'd heard about the incident and had already talked to Caleb, who'd confessed everything. I was surprised. Why would Caleb admit the truth so fast? Sarah explained that Caleb had always been a bit off, struggling to make friends and sometimes acting like he wasn't himself. She sounded apologetic, even sad, and I started to feel a pang of sympathy. Maybe Caleb wasn't a bad kid, just troubled. Sarah suggested a sleepover to help the boys bond, offering to host. Against my better judgment, I agreed, thinking it might help Ethan move past the fear. That weekend, I drove Ethan to Sarah's house, a tidy colonial with a wrap-around porch. He was back to his chatty self, bouncing with excitement, which eased my nerves. Sarah invited me in, and we hit it off over glasses of Chardonnay. She was charming, funny, the kind of person you'd want as a friend. But when I asked about Caleb's behavior, her smile faded. She lowered her voice, glancing toward the basement where the boys were playing. Caleb had seen doctors, she said, who thought he'd outgrow his issues. He wasn't violent, just strange. She assured me Ethan would be safe, and I believed her. She seemed so genuine, so desperate to help her son fit in. I stayed longer than I planned, laughing and sipping wine before heading downstairs to say goodbye to Ethan. He and Caleb were sprawled out, playing a board game, giggling like old pals. I kissed Ethan's forehead and drove home, feeling lighter. The next morning, I pulled up to Sarah's house to pick Ethan up. He was waiting by the door, his backpack slung over one shoulder, a big smile on his face. I waved at Sarah, who looked exhausted but waved back. Everything seemed fine until we started driving. Out of nowhere, Ethan burst into tears, his body shaking with sobs. My heart stopped. "Baby, what's wrong?" I asked, pulling over. What he told me sent ice through my veins. Everything had been great, he said, until bedtime. They'd set up sleeping bags in the basement side by side and drifted off watching a movie. But in the middle of the night, Ethan woke up, his heart pounding. He didn't know why at first, but then he heard it, whispering, coming from the bathroom. The door was cracked open and a flickering light danced inside, not like a bulb but like a candle, wavering and unnatural. He strained to listen and realized it was Caleb, but Caleb wasn't acting like Caleb. He was talking to himself, calling himself Mr. Black, his voice low and gravelly like an adult's. Ethan thought maybe he was on the phone, but the conversation was too strange, too one-sided, like he was arguing with his reflection. Then the light went out, plunging the basement into darkness. Ethan squeezed his eyes shut, pretending to sleep, his heart hammering. Minutes passed, maybe hours, and then he heard the bathroom door creak. Footsteps padded closer, and the whispering started again, right above him. It wasn't English, just a jumble of sharp, guttural sounds that made his skin crawl. Ethan lay frozen, too scared to breathe as the whispers went on and on. Finally, Caleb shuffled back to his sleeping bag, and the basement fell silent. In the morning, Caleb was his normal self, joking and eating cereal like nothing had happened. Ethan didn't dare ask. I was horrified, my mind spinning. This wasn't just a kid with quirks. This was something darker, something wrong. I called Sarah as soon as we got home, my hands trembling. At first, she laughed it off, saying Caleb was just imaginative. But when I pushed, her voice cracked. She admitted Caleb's issues were worse than she'd let on. A doctor had mentioned dissociative identity disorder, and they'd moved twice before because Caleb had been expelled from schools. I was furious. Why hadn't she warned me? Why had she let my son sleep in that house? Then she begged me not to tell the school, her voice desperate. I mumbled a weak, "Okay," and hung up, torn between pity and rage. I told myself I'd decide what to do by the end of the week, but I didn't get the chance. On Monday, Caleb attacked another kid at recess, bad enough that the school sent a vague email to parents. By that afternoon, he was gone, expelled. I tried calling Sarah, but her number was disconnected. Driven by a mix of fear and curiosity, I drove to their house a few days later. It was empty, the windows dark, no sign of a move. It was like they'd vanished into thin air. I searched online, scouring social media, but found nothing. No trace of Sarah, Caleb, or their life in Willow Creek. That was years ago. Ethan's a teenager now, and he's mostly forgotten that night. His resilience a blessing I'll never take for granted. But I haven't forgotten. I lie awake sometimes picturing Caleb whispering in that basement, his voice not his own. What was he talking to in that mirror? And where are they now? The thought chills me to the bone, a shadow that lingers long after the sun comes up. Growing up in a small town in Alabama, faith was everything. My family was steeped in Southern Baptist tradition, the kind where the Bible was law and anything strange was either God's will or the devil's work. Ghosts? No such thing. But demons? Oh, they were real, lurking in every shadow, waiting for a crack in your soul to slip through. As a kid, I soaked it all up, clinging to the structure of church to make sense of a chaotic world. But my mom, Lila, was different. She didn't buy into the fire and brimstone stuff. God and I have a deal, she'd say with a wink, dodging my questions about why she skipped Sunday services. I loved her, but that distance between us, her indifference to faith, my need for it, carved a rift that only widened as I got older. By the time I was 12, I knew Mom wasn't just quirky. She struggled with addiction, pills mostly, and her mental health was a roller coaster. Some days she was the mom I adored, baking cookies and singing off-key to the radio. Other days she was a stranger, her eyes wild, her words sharp enough to cut. I learned to tiptoe around her moods, but it was like living with a storm cloud, never knowing when it'd burst. Looking back, I'm sure she had schizophrenia or something close, but back then, in the early 90s, mental health wasn't something we talked about. You just prayed harder and hoped for the best. One afternoon, I had a nightmare that shook me to my core. I was in bed, the room dark except for a sliver of moonlight. Mom burst in, her face twisted with rage, screaming words I couldn't make out. She grabbed my arm, shaking me so hard my teeth rattled. I woke up gasping, my heart pounding, my pajamas soaked with sweat. I told myself it was just a dream, but before I could calm down, it happened for real. The door slammed open and there she was, same wild eyes, same furious expression, same guttural yells. My body froze, terror locking my limbs. I managed to push her away, screaming for her to stop. She blinked, like she'd just woken up, and stumbled out without a word. The next morning she acted like nothing had happened, even seemed hurt when I flinched at her touch. "What's wrong, baby?" she asked, her voice soft. I couldn't answer. The coincidence was too eerie, like my dream had been a warning. A few weeks later, something even stranger happened. I was doing homework when I heard Mom screaming from the backyard. It wasn't a scared scream or a pained one. It was almost excited, like she'd won the lottery. I ran outside, my sneakers slipping on the grass, and stopped dead. Mom was standing in the middle of the yard, grinning ear to ear, holding a massive snake at least 6 feet long, its scales glinting in the sun. My stomach dropped. Mom was terrified of snakes, couldn't even watch them on TV without gagging. But there she was, gripping this thing like it was a pet, her eyes gleaming with a manic joy. "Come on, Jessie, touch it," she called, thrusting the snake toward me. I backed away, my voice trembling. "Mom, what the hell are you doing?" She just laughed, tilting her head like she was daring me to be scared. I ran inside, slamming the door, my heart racing. Through the window, I watched her cradle the snake like it was precious before letting it slither away. When she came inside, she brushed it off, saying I must have imagined it. "You and your wild dreams," she teased, but her eyes didn't meet mine. The worst came that winter during a church lock-in. I was 13 by then, and church was my sanctuary, a place where I could escape the chaos of home and feel normal. The lock-in was a big deal. Games, pizza, staying up late with friends. Mom dropped me off, stone cold sober, even hugged me tight before driving away. I felt safe, like I could breathe for the first time in weeks. But around 4 a.m., as we were settling into sleeping bags in the chapel, a loud knocking echoed through the room. It wasn't just a tap. It was deliberate, rhythmic, moving around the building like someone was circling us. My friends and I sat up, whispering nervously. The sound came from the front doors, then the windows, then both at once. Impossible and unnatural. It wasn't the wind or an animal. It felt alive, predatory. I ran to wake Pastor Evans, who was snoring in his office. The second he stepped into the chapel, the knocking stopped, like it had been waiting for him. He grabbed his keys, his face pale, and opened the front doors. I'll never forget what we saw. Mom was standing there, barefoot in the freezing snow, her nightgown soaked with sweat, her hair plastered to her face. Her lips were moving, muttering something I couldn't hear, and her eyes, God, her eyes locked onto me with a smile that wasn't hers. It was slow, unnatural, like something wearing her skin. Pastor Evans tried to stop me, but I felt pulled like a magnet drawing me to her. I climbed into her car, my body trembling, expecting her to lash out. But she didn't. She drove home in silence, her hands steady on the wheel, her face blank. When we got home, she stopped in the doorway, just staring at me as I walked to my room. I locked my door and stayed awake, listening for her footsteps, but the house was dead quiet. In the morning, she was in the kitchen humming as she made pancakes, acting like she'd never left the house. "I was just about to pick you up from church," she said, smiling. My blood ran cold. She had no memory of the night before, no clue she'd driven me home. I tried to ask, but she just laughed it off, saying I looked tired. No one at church ever mentioned it. Not Pastor Evans, not my friends, not a soul. It was like they were too scared to acknowledge it. Or maybe they didn't know how. That's how people treated Mom back then, like she was a puzzle no one wanted to solve. She passed away years ago, her battles with addiction and her mind finally taking their toll. I miss her, the real her, the one who'd sing to me when I was little. But those memories are tangled with the others, the nightmares, the snake, the night she came for me. I tell myself it was her illness, that there's a logical explanation for it all. But deep down, I'm not sure. Some nights I still hear that knocking in my dreams, and I wake up wondering if it was ever just her out there or something else entirely. When my oldest son Noah started sleepwalking at 9, I didn't think much of it. Kids do weird things, right? Phases come and go, and I figured this was just one of those quirks he'd outgrow. We lived in an old Victorian house in Maine, the kind with creaky floors and too many shadows. But it was home. I'm a light sleeper, always have been, so I'd catch Noah's nighttime wanderings before he got too far. My husband, Tom, could sleep through a hurricane, so it was always me slipping out of bed to guide Noah back to his room. At first, it was almost sweet, like he was a little ghost drifting through the house, lost in his dreams. Noah's sleepwalking wasn't dramatic at first. I'd find him standing in the hallway outside our bedroom, swaying slightly, his eyes open but empty. That was the part that got me. Those eyes. They weren't his, not really. They looked past me, through me, like he was staring at something I couldn't see. It gave me chills, but I'd shake it off, telling myself it was just how sleepwalkers looked. Sometimes he'd mutter soft words I couldn't catch, like he was talking to someone in his head. Other times he was silent, just breathing in this slow, heavy way that made my skin prickle. I'd take his hand, whisper his name, and lead him back to bed. He never remembered a thing in the morning, waking up with his usual goofy grin, ready to tackle the day. Things got weirder a few months in. One night I woke to a strange sound, tap, 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 like rain on a window, but it wasn't raining. It was faint at first, easy to dismiss as a dream, but it kept going, steady and deliberate. I lay there, straining to place it, my heart picking up speed. It wasn't the house settling or the wind, it was too rhythmic, too intentional. I glanced at Tom, still snoring, and decided to check it out myself. I wasn't scared, not exactly, just curious, but there was a nagging unease I couldn't shake. When I stepped into the hallway, I saw him, Noah, standing at the far end facing the wall. His forehead was pressed against it, tapping lightly in time with the sound I'd heard. His fingers brushed the wall, moving in sync like he was trying to push through it. My breath caught. "Noah?" I whispered, but he didn't flinch, just kept tapping, his small body swaying like he was in a trance. I moved closer, my heart pounding, but something stopped me from touching him. The way he moved, so purposeful, so unlike him, sent a shiver down my spine. I forced myself to act, gently shaking his shoulder. He blinked, stepped back, and let me guide him to bed without a word. In the morning he was his normal self, oblivious to the whole thing. It happened a few more times, always the same, tapping, swaying, that eerie focus on the wall. I told myself it was just sleepwalking, maybe his brain processing the layout of the house in some weird way. Eventually he stopped and the memory faded, tucked away like a strange footnote in our family story. That is, until my younger son Liam started doing the same thing. Liam was 8 when it began, years after Noah's phase had ended. At first I brushed it off as coincidence. Kids sleepwalk. It runs in families, right? But the details piled up, each one more unsettling than the last. Liam didn't just wander, he stood in the hallway, swaying, his eyes vacant, just like Noah. He'd mutter sometimes, too, his voice too soft to make out. I tried to stay calm, but it felt like the house was playing tricks on me, dragging me back to those sleepless nights with Noah. I'd guide Liam back to bed, my hands shaking, and pray it was just a phase. Then came the night I heard the tapping again. I knew what I'd find before I even left my room, but seeing Liam there, forehead pressed to the same spot on the wall, fingers grazing it in that same eerie rhythm, made my stomach lurch. It was like watching a rerun of a nightmare, every detail identical. I called his name, touched his shoulder, but he didn't respond, just kept tapping, lost in some deep, unreachable place. My mind raced. Liam had never seen Noah sleepwalk. Noah was a teenager by then, long past that phase. There was no way Liam could have copied him, no reason for him to mimic this exact behavior. The thought hit me like a punch. Something was wrong, something beyond a kid's sleep habits. I snapped Liam out of it, my voice sharper than I meant, and tucked him into bed, my heart still racing. I tried to rationalize it, genetics maybe, or some subconscious memory. But the precision of it, the way both boys zeroed in on that one spot, made my skin crawl. Liam outgrew it just like Noah, and for years I pushed it out of my mind. Life moved on. The boys grew up, and the house felt normal again. Then last month everything changed. Noah and Liam are in college now, and with the house so quiet, Tom and I decided to renovate. The place was old, full of quirks we'd lived with for years. Peeling wallpaper, drafty windows, the works. We started in the hallway, tearing down the faded floral paper to freshen things up. As we peeled back a section near the stairs, I froze. Underneath was a mirror, an ornate antique thing with a heavy frame, its glass cloudy with age. My breath caught. Why would someone wallpaper over a mirror? It didn't make sense. I stood there staring at it, a chill creeping up my spine. It felt wrong, like we'd uncovered something meant to stay hidden. Then it hit me. The mirror was in the exact spot where Noah and Liam had tapped all those years ago. My knees buckled. There was no way they could have known it was there, buried under layers of paper, invisible to anyone. Yet both of them, years apart, had stood there pressing against it like they were trying to step through. My heart raced as the memories flooded back. Those vacant eyes, the rhythmic taps, the sense that they weren't alone. I told Tom we had to get rid of it. He thought I was overreacting, but he helped me pry it off the wall. We hauled it to the dump that same day, and I watched it disappear into a pile of junk, hoping that was the end of it. But it's not. I can't stop thinking about that mirror, about what it meant. Why was it covered? What were my boys reaching for in their sleep? The logical part of me wants to say it's coincidence, that sleepwalking just looks creepy in an old house. But the other part, the part that wakes me up at night, isn't so sure. I walk past that spot in the hallway now and it feels different, heavier, like the air's holding its breath. I don't know what's real anymore, but one thing's certain. That mirror was hidden for a reason, and I'm terrified we set something free when we found it.